Hello and welcome to another QuizCon Forms training video. Today we'll talk about user actions. As explained in previous QuizCon Forms training videos, we have two types of custom actions. We have automatic actions, which are triggered when item is added, updated, or deleted. And we have user actions, which are triggered when a user clicks a button. So they are manually triggered. And today we'll talk about user actions. As we did in previous videos, we'll be using the PO request example. So we have our list where end users are adding purchase order requests. And we would like to implement the following manual custom action. When an approver views a purchase order request, we would like to have a button saying approve. And when the approver clicks this approve button, we would like two activities to be executed. One marks the purchase order request as approved, and the second one sends an email to the end user who requested this purchase order, notifying him that his purchase order request has been approved. So we need to implement a user action which displays this approve button, and it should include two activities. One updates the item, makes it approved, and the second activity sends an email to the end user. Let's go ahead and start implementing first the activities that we need for this custom action. Let's start by creating the first activity, which updates the PO request status and makes it approved. This is my purchase request list. Let's go to the QuizCon app settings page. And let's go to the activities page and create this new activity. So this will be an update item activity because we want to update the status of the request and make the status equal approved. So let's give it a proper name. And let's configure the activity. So we want to update the current item, and we want specifically to update the status column and make it approved. We could also make this activity more generic by using variables, as we always recommend. So to use variables, this is a drop-down because this is a choice column. If we want to use variables, we just need to click here, the property, and we can use the regular syntax for variables. So let's call it stat, and that's it. So the value for this variable will be given in the calling custom action. Okay, so we've created our first update activity. Now we need to create the second activity, which sends an email to the end user, letting him know that his PO request was approved. Let's go ahead and implement this second activity. Okay, so let's click the new activity link here, and this will be an email activity. Let's give it a proper name. And let's configure the properties. So as recommended, we'll be using variables for all these properties. And in the body, let's have a message telling the user that his request was approved, and maybe include the ID of the request and the title and the price of the request, just to include some dynamic data in the body. And let's have some basic formatting here. So let's make this underlined, and let's make the data appear on bold. Just basic formatting. Okay, that's it. So we've got our email activity configured. I made the recipient a variable, and I made the email body a bit dynamic, include some data from the item. Let's click save and continue to create our custom action. Now that we have our two activities, let's create our user action. So going back, and let's go to custom action settings page. And let's create a new user action. So to create a user action, we need to choose the user action type. And now let's give our user action a proper name and description. Now we have the button caption. Most of the time it will be same as the name, but not always. So you can, by default, it's the same, but you can change the button caption. Confirmation message is optional, and it allows you to prompt the approver, the one who clicks this button, are you sure you want to run this custom action? So it's not always necessary. I won't be using it. And let's select the button icon. By the way, if you do not select an icon, you'll have this lightning icon by default, but let's select some other icon. Let's search for, let's say, check. Okay, let's make this one our approve button icon. And then you can also configure where do you want the user to be redirected after he clicks this button. So I plan to click this button when I view the request. So I'll be in the view item page. So I can redirect, I can keep it empty and not redirect the user anywhere. He'll stay in the view item page, or I can redirect him to some list view. So you can put here a custom URL, whatever you want, or you can use one of the tokens. So I'll redirect the user to the all items view. Now you can also show the approver, the one who clicks the button, some form where you want him to provide additional data as part of this custom action. We'll get to it in another video. Currently, we'll keep it simple. So what we've configured so far is just the name and the description of this user action, and also the button caption and the button icon. Next thing is, as we did before with an automatic action, is to configure the activities which will be executed by this custom action. So we want first to update the item status. And since we use the variable, this is the time to say what value we want to give this variable. So we want to make it approved. We use the variable because I wanted this activity to remain generic. We could have configured the activity to make the status approved and not use the variable. It's up to me. Second activity that I want to execute is the send PO approved to the email to the end user. And here we also have some variables. So we want to send it to the end user who requested this purchase order. So it's the creator of the item. So I'm going here and I can use either requested by column value. Let's use this one, requested by column value. And hello user, it's the same value. It's the user who requested this purchase order. So let's use it again. And the PO ID, this is a system property. So let's use it. The ID column value, this is the PO ID. And the request, the PO request title, that's included. And finally, the purchase request price. This is also a property that I wanted to include. That's it. So if I summarize, this user action calls two activities. It's the update item activity, which updates the status of this purchase request. And the second one sends an email to the user who requested this purchase order. And as for conditions, in the case of a user action, conditions mean when do you want this button to be visible. So one condition would be status must be equal to new. I want to display this button only for new purchase requests. Another condition that I would use here is that the current user must be an approver. Now, how do you identify approvers? So typically it should be a user that belongs to some group, okay? PO approvers or something like this. So if I had such a group here, I would put it as a condition. Or it can be, if it's a small company that there's only one specific user, you can also say the current user is equal to some specific user, okay? For example, myself, okay? But this is less common. Typically, you would need a user that belongs to some group, or maybe the user's manager, and we'll get to it in another video, how to get the current user's manager. So for this example, we'll be using just a single condition that says, show me this user action only for purchase request that their status is new. So let's save this custom action and see how it works. Going back to our list, we have several purchase requests that their status is new. Let's click this last one. And this opens the view item form. And you see that we have here a custom button, which says approve PO request. And in its tooltip, you see the description that I configured for this user action. So let's click it. And I have been redirected to the all items view. This is because I configured this user action to redirect the user after he clicks the button. And you see that now the status is approved. One last thing we need to check is that an email was sent to the purchase order requester, which is me. So let's check my email. Okay, so I got a new email here. Let's open it. And as you can see, it includes the dynamic data retrieved from the approved purchase request. Now, if I click the same purchase request, which is now approved, you can see that the custom button here, the user action that I added, does not appear. And this is, of course, because of the condition that we have for this user action, which says, show this user action, show this custom button, only if the status of this item equals new. And because this one is already approved, you don't see this user action. So the conditions help us make these user actions, these custom buttons that we can add to the form, context sensitive. They don't appear always, they appear only when relevant. Okay, so we've seen how to create a user action, and on previous video we saw how to create an automatic action. Both actions that we showed so far were very simple, just one or two activities with a single condition which applies to all activities. On our next video, we'll show how to implement a more complex custom action, a more complex workflow that includes branching.